This is Milos Sarcev, and this is my 2019 Classic Mr. Olympia review. First, I want to define what is classic and why do we have a classic bodybuilding and how it should be really judged. So when we go back in history and we look at greats from the 60s, 70s, 80s, from Grimek, Steve Reeves, Bill Pearl, Larry Scott in the 60s, 70s, Serge Nubret, Frank Zane, Arnold, everybody, up to 80s with Lee Haney, Gasparian, Barry DeMay. We had that classic bodybuilding look. In 90s, judges faced one problem. Dorian Yates showed up from another planet with so much muscle mass. In 1993, they didn't know really what to do because he was so overly muscular, he was complete, he was conditioned, and they stayed away and they awarded this muscularity over all the other aspects from a balance, shape, and everything else, which I touched in my Mr. Olympia review. In the 1990s, once Dorian started winning, in order for all of us who competed with him, we had to try to add more mass. So more mass, bigger, doesn't necessarily mean better. It was throughout the years in the 1990s and 2000s that we had a huge, incredibly muscular physiques winning the shows. So that was basically a trend, and this is why IBB decided, okay, we need to bring back the beauty to the bodybuilding. Let's have this classic physique, classic bodybuilding, where we're going to limit the height and weight ratio, and these guys are just not going to be able to be too much big. And this is how it all started. Now, how should the classic physique be judged? In RX Muscle review, we're talking to Chris Aceto, we touched the subject. He did mention, like, well, classic physique should be judged differently. Well, I don't agree. I think that it should be same as bodybuilding. It's still bodybuilding physique. They have that classic look now because they're limited with the weight. By the way, I don't know who came up with that formula because height and weight ratio, for me, just doesn't cut it. And we had a lot of classic physique guys. They look classic. They should step on the stage, but they have to cut out 10 or more pounds, 15 pounds. For example, many times told me I was perfect example for classic physique, but when I competed, I was 5'10", 237, 238. There's no way I could make 215 pound limit for the classic physique. So this is just something that I like to touch that subject and discuss with maybe Jim Mannion and powers to be, that they should let that weight limit go up a little bit, because a lot of guys are now also going to be limited because they hardly cut it into it. So how are they going to improve? So you're going to basically prevent them from improving from year to year because they have to have that same weight limit. So from aspect of judging, I would still apply balance, shape, conditioning, muscularity, and presentation. So in my review for RX Muscle, right after Prejudging, I did say there was three guys that was really clearly that is going to be between them. Chris Bumstead, George Peterson, and Brian. Brian, being 2 times Mr. Olympia already, was a favorite, but for me, at the Prejudging, I gave my nod to George Peterson. So let's look at the video and let's see why I judged the way I did. So let's start. Okay, we are here at Prejudging, and judges are about to make a first call out. Before we go to the first call out, I'm going to say again, it's classic physique, but it's still bodybuilding show. So how should it be judged? It should still be judged with balance, shape, conditioning, presentation, and muscularity. This is my belief. One thing that I have to say right off the bat, all the classic guys were super conditioned. This was really such a pleasure to see 30-something guys, not one guy out of shape, contrary to Mr. Olympia. So let's go for the first call out. In a RX Muscle interview post Prejudging, I expressed opinion that it was very close between George Peterson and Brian Ansley, with, for me, Chris being third. Chris Aceto believed that Chris should win, and he was right after we received the results. It's just my point of view that I'm going to now dissect here in video analysis. and emphasize why in each pose I believe certain guys should win. Once again, this symmetry frontal X pose should be mandatory. I really don't understand why they at least didn't bring a symmetry around that the judges' aesthetics shape balance. That should be bread and butter of introducing competitors to audience with a frontal X pose. In frontal X right here, what are we looking for? Crazy V-taper and X-frame, and Chris Bumstead does have it, but he's somewhat taller. So does he have enough muscle mass as these two guys? It remains to be seen. But surprise of the show is a Chinese Chen Kang, who is definitely great potential. As you see, his upper body is not up to his lower body that is tremendous, maybe even overdeveloped. But he's going to be a contender for many, many years to come. All the way to the right, we have a Keon Pearson, who is such a talent that many people actually told me they believe he has the best shape, and I wouldn't disagree. It just didn't have that maturity that comes with ages of training and pounding the weights. So he didn't have a hardness. If you look at him to the right, to the guys to the left, the George and Breon, there's that density definition that comes with years and years of training. They're moving Breon to the center, which obviously is very logical. Chris Bumstead, there was just 1 point behind him. Here again, relax pose, super important. I can see why judges would give Chris this pose over Breon. He just takes more space, and it's bigger, taller, wider, so he can definitely win this shot. Breon doesn't have a sweeping thighs. He does have a separation, but doesn't have that vastus lateralis, this sweep that would create that X-frame that I think would make him that much more competitive. And also, he doesn't have such extreme V-taper as George and Chris. Yeah, they're moving people around again. But here, you can appreciate front relaxed pose. And George is standout. I mean, glance for 1 second on the screen, and George, because of these crazy abs, the great separation, V-taper X-frame, he attracts most attention. Beside Chris, Chris' weakness is his bicep, and it's visible in some poses. Here, not necessarily. So he could be easy call, of Steve Weinberger to put him on the first in a frontal X pose. But I would still argue that George could be winning that shot. And now here, the top three in the middle. And here again, just, yeah. You see, George, I mean, this is pretty much ideal. And I know that he's moving on now to 212 pounds. He's not going to have to restrict his weight. So good luck to him. Tremendous physique. In my opinion, he could have been first or second. Okay, front double bicep. Chris doesn't have arms to match Breon and George. It just, more than apparent. He does have a crazy X-frame and V-taper, better than Breon, so judges might consider that. For me, still, this is the winning physique. George, in this pose, is, for me, pretty much close to flawless. Great arms, great V-taper, back, chest full in, this pose already. Abs deep, while maintaining the lats. Usually from double biceps, you either spread the lats or flex your abs. And when you flex your abs, you do lose the width a little bit. Not in George's case. He does it perfectly. legs are super separated. So is Brian's, but Brian doesn't have that sweep. Chris has phenomenal legs, great V taper, so I can see argument the judges want to go with Chris. Keon Pearson had a structure, and this pose is phenomenal. I'm just not a huge fan of vacuum double biceps. I know that many people are. I'm not. Vacuum doesn't show anything. Side chest, super competitive. Now, top 4 guys can win. Keon Pearson looks the best. You know, for me, that's really his shot. I mean, leg looks tremendous. Width here that he shows, conditioning on this particular pose looks on part. George's does old-fashioned chest up, side chest pose of like Arnold and guys in 70s. Brian brought it down a little bit. Chris is super competitive. His arms are not lacking from a side view, so Chris could easily win this shot for judges, and that's probably what happened. But make no mistakes, they were super close between top 4 guys. Chen Kang just doesn't have a size, and Alex was kind of flattish on this pose. Not full as top 4 guys. My view, yes, I would give this pose to Keon. Now, back double biceps pose, I mean, here is really where Chris Bumstead was in big time trouble, because 2 guys right next to him both have a crazy backs, and George in particular, crazy width, thickness, detail, everything is happening. Arms look even better than Brian's. Brian beats him from the front, had the bigger arms, but for whatever reason from the back, Brian's don't look as big, and George's just look fantastic. V taper is way more prominent than Brian's, and as you see, Chris just doesn't have enough mass yet. So I don't see how any judge would be giving Chris this pose. So he was 3rd at best in back double biceps, with for me George winning, Brian being 2nd. Keon Pearson again very competitive, you know, still not as big as the other guys, and conditioning was just not that super dry look. Good conditioning, not great. Ab shot. Okay, so abdominals and thighs should be abdominals and thighs always. A lot of guys are doing vacuum or intercostal shot. It should be ab shot. And here, when I freeze it, Chris has good abs, but he's always counting on his vacuum. I again do not understand why judges even allow the vacuum. It's called abdominals and thighs. When you do the vacuum, what do you show? Okay, what do you show now? Where are the abdominals? So I am completely against this pose. Yeah, Frank Zane, one of my idols, had that tremendous vacuum and all the pictures. Oh, well, it's great, but this is free posing. It's a free posing routine, not abdominals and thighs that should be judged. So how can you judge somebody with a vacuum next to the guy that is doing an ab pose? Brian, for me, was leaning forward a little bit too much. I think that his abs would look even better if he leaned back, like his coach, Chris Cormier, was master of that pose. George sticking this leg out, it didn't go to his favor. This is maybe when I would agree with Steve Weinberger that maybe his legs in a certain position were not big enough, and this is why you are master of illusion on the stage. It's not what you have, it's what you show. So if you have a ability to show your legs in one pose that is showing no weakness, don't change it. Don't change the angle and jeopardize what you have shown to the judges. I really like Keon here also, the great abs, but for whatever reason he also like that vacuum pose. I guess maybe judges and people around him told him, hey, it's great if you can do the vacuum, so keep doing it. Again, you see in this choice of pose, I don't know, I just don't get it. I don't like a vacuum whatsoever. Here, instead of front lat spread and a rear lat spread in the classic physique, we don't have also most muscular pose, we have a classic pose. But how can you judge when every single guy does a different pose? I mean, look at it. So how can this really be judged? Okay, and everybody played to their strengths. Brian, crazy arms, no weaknesses. This is his money shot. I believe he did it from the other side as well, and he looked just as good. George, oh my God, twisting back or back double biceps is unbeatable on the bodybuilding stage as well. He could have been on Mr. Olympia stage in this pose, and he would hold his own against anyone. Chris, choice of pose. He's showing his structure. He understands that his arms are not the best. So, does it flow? Yes, flows perfectly. If I am judged, would I mark him down for the arms? Yes. I was marked down for my arms for 15 years, and I was told many times, like, you need to bring them up. So yeah, it's a great pose. I would probably, if this is the only pose that I show, I would probably change it. Now, here, I like Chris's physique way better with the abs showing like now, rather than vacuum. Because 6 little muscles, intercostals, so much detail, still great width, super separated legs. So this is the pose that, I prefer over this vacuum. Yeah. Yeah, Brian did the same shot from, and here was front lat spread that if that was a mandatory, I think that Chris could dominate that front lat spread pose. So maybe they just judge here front relax, and they say Chris's X-frame and width, waist to lats to shoulders ratio is greatest. So that's why they gave him. But for me, it's still George that is most impressive in this front relax pose. Judges going for a second round, and I don't blame them because it's so close. So I always support many comparisons. And here again, top 4 guys. He can go to Chris, Brian, George, or Keon. I mean, I said Keon was my pick on this pose, but it's super close. Yeah. They didn't go to the back. If they did go to the back again, Chris would be disadvantaged. They're moving now Keon next to Chris. And keep in mind that Chris was second to Brian and lost just by 1 point. And this year, he beat Brian by 1 point. So this is how close it is for the judges between these two. Back double bicep. Okay, there's going to be now shuffling. It's 6 guys. They should, spread them apart a little bit more. But here's a moment that, again, I want to say that I wish they had a rear lat spread pose. That's another pose that the points can be earned. But in back double biceps pose, it's clearly between George and Brian, with me favoring George. And really pay attention. Take a look at top 3. Who jumps in your eyes? Who has the most detail and width and balance and everything? Chris's back cannot be compared to these two. So definitely this is between George and Brian. Brian in this particular moment had a better hamstring glutes. In the last comparison, we're going to see that George was a match. I don't know, maybe he just didn't pay attention in this moment and didn't flex as hard as he could. again, I don't want to repeat 100 times, but again, pose goes to George in my opinion because of the width, detail. Chris is good, in my opinion, not matching. Didn't have enough in arm department, and everything in George's physique flows right here. Brian as well, he had the better arms, here you can see, but he didn't have that width and sweep on the thighs that George had. Again, I don't like George's leg like this, so now he leaves the room for Brian and Chris to beat him. And if judges saw that, I understand. Brian, solid, but again, I think that if he leaned back, his abs would look better. Chris counting on his vacuum. Again, it's not vacuum pose, it's called abdominals and thigh pose. So maybe judges should clarify that. They don't have it, so guys keep doing it. And here it is, what I'm talking about, just standing relax. You can judge the physiques, and for me, George was tad better than anybody. Again, I'm gonna clarify this. All three good picks. Okay, we have now comparison for the 4th, 5th, and 6th place. We have a surprise wonder from China, Chen Kang. Everybody is saying Flex Wheeler lookalike and his prodigy, Keon Pearson and Alex Cabronero. Front double biceps pose. Okay, conditioning definitely goes to Alex. Shape to Keon, and Chen Kang for me is actually most impressive of all in this pose. Yeah, he didn't have an exact conditioning of Alex, and maybe V-taper and crazy arms of Keon, but it just overall look, very, very good and powerful look for Chen, so I would actually see him winning this shot. Side chest, as I said earlier, a great shot for Keon Pearson. I would have him winning the shot, Chen being second and Alex third. Back double biceps pose. Here you can definitely see conditioning of Alex being superior, much drier, dense, fibrotic, everything is there. Keon, beautiful shape, but no conditioning. And Chen, his upper body here, you can see it's somewhat smaller. So from this angle, this shot, I would actually go with Alex first, Keon second, and Chen third. Legs, tremendous on Chen Kang, but soft. No separation, conditioning, and dryness as Alex would have. Now, these are the crazy legs of Chen Kang. And abs, very good. His torso, as you see, appears somewhat smaller, but still tremendous. This is a great pose for Chen. And Keon, I would give Keon this pose with Chen Kang being second and Alex third. Now, here's this classic pose, which now at least two guys are doing the same pose, so you can compare it. And here we go, all three of them. So I agree with the judges, with Keon being fourth, Chen Kang fifth, and Alex Cabronero sixth. And we have a top three comparison at the end of the prejudging. So this is obviously what judges wanted to see these three gentlemen. I said earlier already, front double biceps for me goes to George. here is why. Brian and Chris very close. Judges can go either way. I think that the front double biceps clearly goes to George. Side chest, now this is complete toss-up. Anybody can win, and I have no problem. Chris maybe actually looks that he can take this pose. Very, very close. Okay. Back double bicep, no question, goes to George. And here now, this is what I'm talking about. He had his hamstring glutes the way he's supposed to have them. He didn't really have it in the previous pose, so I can see why judges would maybe go with Brian, but now you see that the hamstring glutes are there. And boom. I still think untouchable in this pose. You know, Brian is not wide enough. Chris doesn't have enough back and a bicep to match George. Okay, that's usually a sign that Chris might be favored. Put in the middle. Okay, ab shut, again very close. I don't like particularly how George did it. Before he put the leg like this, he looked better. Abs are good. Chris has a structure and looks very good in ab shut. I just don't like him doing this vacuum, even from the side. Oh my God. And Brian again leaning forward for whatever reason. So these are top three. Again, classic pose. Exactly the same as first time. Brian looks unbeatable in this pose. On its own, he should be compared in the same pose with the others. Chris, great choice because of a V-taper and the structure, but biceps is not up to pair next to Brian. And here's George, unbeatable in this twisting back shot or back double bicep shot. You know, so I don't know how judges really compare, you know, when they have a completely different pose in this round. Okay, so that concludes prejudging and my take. So here at the end of the prejudging, by what I saw live and what I see now again in the video footage, I would still go with George, Brian second, and Chris third. Until next time, this is Milos Sarcev.